Welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, do crime victims have rights? But first, let's take a look at Tuesday is primary election day, and there's a host of offices on the ballot. As they say, let's get to it.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, well, there are multiple ballots, or referenda, I'll call them, on the ballot when we all vote on Tuesday. And I guess I have to be careful about that, Marc Levy, who's sitting across from me, because you could do mail-in ballots, and a lot of people have already voted. So when we say May 18th is technically Election Day, right?
Right, that's right. But yeah, there are already ballots sitting at election offices around the state and ready to be counted. So yeah, a lot of people have voted who are going to vote. Yeah,
that's exactly right. All right, I have a number of subjects that I want to take up with Marc. I want to talk with him about the ballot questions. I want to talk to him about there's a big worker shortage. And then there's election legislation, you know, that we'll have to see where that goes. All right, there are four, I'll call them referenda questions. We'll get the plural in there. Two of them have to do with the limit on a governor's executive authority, executive power. And then let's talk about the other two for a minute that I don't think have gotten nearly the coverage and the play in the media that the referenda questions have gotten.
Right. The referenda, the first two on the governor's emergency disaster powers are very partisan, and there's a big fight going on over that. The other two, one is to essentially add a prohibition against discrimination on the basis of race and ethnicity to the state constitution. There's one already in the state constitution going back to 1971 that deals with gender. And when you talk to constitutional law professors and lawmakers, they say it won't make a difference, really, practically speaking, because federal case law already makes it clear that you cannot discriminate on the basis of race or ethnicity.
Right.
But the sponsor of this, Vincent Hughes, who's a Democratic state senator from Philadelphia, says he wants this in the state constitution to go farther than the U.S. Constitution in case that federal case law is rolled back by judges who are sitting on the bench now.
Yeah.
And sorry, go ahead.
When it went through the legislature, it was bipartisan. Is that correct?
So it was attached in legislation to the two questions on executive power. So the votes were skewed by that. So you saw most Democrats against it, even though if they had been voted separately, you might have seen a unanimous vote in favor of the race and ethnicity ballot question.
But the point I want to ask you about it, I haven't seen or heard any strong opposition. I haven't heard or seen any opposition to it at all.
There are some discussions about the pros and cons of this amendment, but the sponsor of it, Vincent Hughes, as I said, Senate Republicans, House Republicans are firmly in favor of it.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the fourth referenda.
And so that involves a borrowing fund that the state maintains for volunteer firefighters, fire squads. So this would allow, this ballot question is asking whether the professional firefighting squads, municipal squads that are paid for with tax dollars, to also access this borrowing fund. And it lets them borrow at 2%, which is much lower than market rates. So it would help them save money when they're borrowing money to pay for a truck, to pay for equipment, et cetera.
Before we move off this issue, let's talk a little bit about the May 18th primary. I mean, the fact of the matter is these are very important elections. We often call them off-year elections. I don't like that term because these are local, these are municipal officials, these are county officials. We're even electing individuals. We're nominating them, I should say. Remember, this is a nomination.
Yeah.
Nominating for the three appeals courts in our state.
Yep.
Commonwealth, Superior, and Supreme. So these deal in many ways with folks who make rules and laws and regulations dealing with police, dealing with taxes. I mean, it's complicated.
And in a lot of ways, sometimes the local officials are the most important public official in the lives of Americans. And so these are important elections, but if past turnout figures hold true, fewer than 1/5 of voters will participate in this election. And one of the races for courts, we have a 3-way Republican race for the nomination for the state Supreme Court to hold a seat on that bench.
Right, and it takes a lot of work. I mean, I don't know about you, but I go and pick up my mail every day, and I guess because the door knocking is off and the street corner rallies are off because of COVID-19, and so the mailings are continuing to increase is, one way to, I guess, to make up for the lack of the ability to go door to door, particularly in, elections for city and county officials.
Right. I mean, there's not enough money in these races to put something on TV. There typically aren't enough volunteers in these races to go door knocking. But so the easiest way to mass communicate is through the mail.
Yeah. And many of these officials that we elect, it's the start of a career that can lead to the governorship or lead to a U.S. Senate position or offices in the state legislature, correct?
That's right. John Boehner once joked that he ran for a seat in his local town, kind of the local town board, and next thing he knew, he was Speaker of the U.S. House.
Yeah, it does. All right. A worker shortage, and it's all over America, but we'll talk about it in the state of Pennsylvania after we return.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
Marc Levy is with the Associated Press, and he's my guest for this segment, as well as the last segment of the program. Well, Marc, I'll tell you something. You can't go anywhere and not see help wanted, help wanted, help wanted. I mean, the signs are everywhere. And is this going to, well, first of all, am I accurate about that?
You are, and the National Federation of Independent Business does a monthly survey of employers, and they're seeing record highs of business owners reporting that they can't fill open positions.
Yeah.
So there is something definitely going on.
Now, is there any kind of employment in particular that's affected by this, or is it pretty much across the board?
As I understand it, the hospitality industry is being hurt the most, and that was the industry that was hurt the most under the pandemic, with a lot of restaurant shutdowns, bar shutdowns, and these establishments in Pennsylvania are about to see capacity restrictions lifted, but even with capacity restrictions, they're struggling to fill their reduced staff. So you're seeing Republican-led states primarily trying to reinstitute work search rules or refusing the extra federal unemployment money, which is $300 a week.
Yeah, I mean, what I read and hear about most often is these extended unemployment benefits are, people are saying, no, I'm getting money. If I go to work, I'm only going to make about the same, so why go to work? And then I guess President Biden has said if you get a job and it's sufficient, you have to take it.
Right, and that's basically the law in Pennsylvania. And Democrats and the governor's administration are saying people aren't not taking jobs because they're getting the unemployment. They may be home with a child who's distance learning because of the pandemic. They may not have childcare because of the pandemic. They may be waiting for a vaccination shot. Or before they go back to work, or maybe during the pandemic they skilled up. They went back to school.
And the pressure might even grow because at the end of this month, Memorial Day, Governor Wolf has said we're going to open up the economy further. Right. I guess you still have to wear these, right?
That's right.
That's
the masking order is in effect until 70% of people 18 and over are vaccinated. But yeah, Memorial Day capacity restrictions in restaurants and all other business go away. And what Republicans here in Pennsylvania are doing are advancing a bill that would reinstate the state's work search rule, which essentially says if you're receiving unemployment compensation, you need to fulfill certain duties such as looking for work, searching for work, and if you get a satisfactory job offer, you need to take it.
All right, before I let you go, I want to talk about election legislation. The Democrats and Republicans have pretty substantial differences over mail-in ballots and whether there was fraud and how much fraud took place. And there's a debate going on in the Pennsylvania legislature about legislation that deals with voting.
Yeah, so this is essentially propelled by Donald Trump's complaints that the election was stolen from him in Pennsylvania, which are completely baseless. But what Republicans in the legislature have done is hold hearings, and they've wrapped up those hearings, and they've put out a report. And one of the things that they'll want to see in legislation is voter ID, tougher voter ID standards in Pennsylvania. And the governor's office told them flatly that they're not interested in that. So if they want to talk about it, they have to talk about other things. The counties would like the ability to process all these mail-in ballots before Election Day. That was a big thing they asked for last fall, and Republicans refused to advance that legislation without other things attached to it that Governor Wolf opposed. So there's still a lot yet to be done on election legislation.
Well, that's a good point. And Governor Wolf is not going to sign, it looks like he's not going to sign any legislation that, how do I put this, that changes the nature of mail-in balloting
That would essentially restrict access to registering or access to a mail-in ballot. Yeah, he's made that clear in the past.
Yeah, the one thing that I thought the legislature might do is, some other states have done this, is to begin the counting process of the ballots, as opposed to waiting until Election Day, because election officials were overwhelmed by the massive number of ballots that they had to deal with on Election Day.
Well, and Pennsylvania sticks out like a sore thumb. I mean, I think there's only like 2 states that actually make election offices wait until Election Day to count mail-in ballots. Practically every other state allows it in advance. It was the top priority of counties to help run a smooth election last fall, and lawmakers wouldn't do it.
All right, coming up, the crime victims have rights. We'll get to that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Cross-State Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Welcome back. Well, we're going to talk about crime victims' rights, and joining me to do that is Jennifer Riley. She's the Executive Director of Marsy's Law for Pennsylvania. Jennifer, we have to start out with, the question. What is Marsy's Law?
Sure. So Marsy's Law here in Pennsylvania is an effort to take the crime victims' rights that we currently have in statute and elevate them to our state constitution. So right now our constitution is silent when it comes to crime victims, and we're one of only 15 states where that's the case. So Marsy's Law is an effort to remedy that.
What was what problem did Marsy have?
Sure. So Marsy's Law is named after a young woman who was stalked and murdered in 1983 by an ex-boyfriend. And what happened was, a week after her death, her brother and mother visited her grave and then went to the grocery store. And at the grocery store, they ran into the accused. They had not been notified that he had been released, and a big confrontation occurred, and it was incredibly traumatic for Marsy's family. So that was when Marsy's Law was essentially born and created, so that no other family had to go through that.
All right, let's talk about, as I promoted this, I talked about crime victims' rights. Talk a little bit about that. Do crime victims have rights?
So right now we have rights in statute here in Pennsylvania. So victims have the right to be notified. Victims have the right to be present in court proceedings. They have the right to be heard and confer with the prosecutor. And there's a few others. The problem is here in Pennsylvania is that victims don't have standing. So that means that if their right is violated, they cannot petition the court for a remedy. So it's essentially like having rights without remedies here in Pennsylvania, which is why we need Marsy's Law.
Is this common?
So we're one of only 15 states who doesn't have constitutional rights for crime victims. So I would say it's not uncommon for crime victims to be faced with the situation where their voice is being stifled in the criminal justice process. But the problem is here in Pennsylvania, there's no recourse for crime victims if that actually happens.
Yeah, now, as I understand this, when you have a constitutional amendment, you have to go through a process in the state legislature, has to approve it, not once but twice. Was it overwhelming? Was it bipartisan?
So Marsy's Law passed in 2 consecutive sessions, like you said, in 2018 and 2019, and nearly unanimously in the legislature. So it was completely overwhelming. We had support from both chambers, all leadership, and it was near unanimous in 2 consecutive sessions. And those votes allowed the measure to be on the November 2019 ballot essentially for the voters to then decide if we want to approve Marsy's Law here in Pennsylvania.
It was over 70% approved by the voters, is that correct?
74% of voters approved Marsy's Law, and that's 1.7 million Pennsylvanians, which is incredible.
Yeah. Well, we're going to run to a break and we come back. I want to talk about a bunch of other, some really important elements that deal with that, and particularly the legal challenges to it, and we'll let you talk about the other side because there is another side to this, and we'll do that after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, we're talking about crime victims' rights. It's a very important subject. All right, so one of the big issues, well, first of all, you have a website, and mention that so it's up on the screen so people can get on and get what's in it.
Yeah, so www.marsyslaw4pa.com, and we're also on Facebook and Twitter, and so if anybody wants to get involved or get updates on what's happening, I encourage them to go there.
So your big argument here, it seems to me, is we're talking about statutory versus putting it in the Constitution. In other words, by law, as opposed to putting it into the Constitution. And in a couple of sentences, why is that a big deal?
So it's a big deal for a few reasons, right? First, the standing issue, right? It allows victims to assert their rights in court. But secondly, and almost maybe more importantly, the Constitution is our moral fabric here in Pennsylvania. And right now, our Constitution is silent when it comes to crime victims' rights. And I believe that we owe crime victims, a vulnerable portion of our population, to have a voice within that moral compass of our Constitution.
Well, the legal effort to get this accomplished had a setback in the Commonwealth Court, and that's the court in the state of Pennsylvania that deals with challenges dealing with state law. It does some other things, but that's typically what I think. So if you want to take on the state, you go to Commonwealth Court first. All right, so what did the Commonwealth Court said, put the thumbs down to it, is that correct?
So what happened was a few weeks before the election, Marsy's Law was challenged by the ACLU, the League of Women Voters, and the criminal defense attorneys. And so basically what that challenge is saying that there's technical issues with the amendment itself. So not necessarily on the substance of Marsy's Law, but on the technicalities of the process of getting it to the state constitution. So right now we've been basically in the judicial system ourselves fighting for crime victims throughout this. The Commonwealth Court, we had oral arguments last June, and in January they came out with a split decision 3-2 against Marsy's law. But
On a technicality, you're arguing.
on a technicality, right.
But the League of Women Voters and the ACLU, they're not arguing a technicality, are they?
Well, so there's two things at stake here, right? So they do not fundamentally believe that victims should have constitutional rights. So they're in lockstep with the criminal defense attorneys because their argument is misleading because they're saying rights are zero-sum. It's a zero-sum game. So if you give rights to victims, it takes away rights from the defendants, which is not true. Everybody in the courtroom should have rights. That's what makes it a fair process.
Yeah, hold on a minute. That's my understanding, that their argument had to do with that it denies defendants certain rights. Is that correct?
Well, that's.
I mean, I'm asking if that's their argument.
That's their argument, yes. And in the court proceedings, they're saying that what Marsy's law is doing, it's violating a single subject, the single subject provision within our state constitution. That basically each amendment has to do with a single subject.
One subject, right.
And so we say, yes, it's a single subject, crime victims' rights, and they disagree.
This gets complicated, and now it's before the state Supreme Court?
That's correct.
You want to make a prediction? Probably not. I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that, but I'll ask the question anyway.
Well, I'll tell you this. Pennsylvania, over the past few months, has done a disservice to crime victims. With Marsy's law, with statute of limitations, crime victims across the state are wondering who's on our side, right? What are we as Pennsylvanians going to do about this? And I hope that our Pennsylvania Supreme Court takes a hard look at that and realizes that the only remedy to this injustice that has happened is to certify the election results, to basically allow the will of the people to go through and amend the state constitution to include Marsy's law.
Well, if they were to rule it unconstitutional on technical grounds, would you have to go, obviously then you'd have to start at scratch and deal with whatever on the record the Supreme Court says it's deficient in, and go back through the entire process again.
That's correct.
Right? An amendment to consecutive sessions of the Pennsylvania legislature has to approve Constitution. This is getting pretty technical.
It is, and it's scary for crime victims. So crime victims are asking, what's happening? Why is this taking so long? If the Supreme Court chooses not to support us, what do we do? And the only thing I can say to them is we're not going away. Yeah. We're going to continue to fight for them.
Now, last question. Governor Wolf was a supporter of, but after the Commonwealth Court decision, he said, no, I'm not going to support it going to the Supreme Court of the state. Why?
That's correct. I'm not sure why. I mean, you'd have to ask him, but what I can say is that Pennsylvania, again, Pennsylvania's failed crime victims over the past few months, and that's an example of the failures that Pennsylvania has done. And I sincerely hope that we as Pennsylvanians value crime victims' rights enough to elevate their rights to our state constitution.
Yeah. Well, look, I want to thank you for coming in. This is an important subject. We'll have to see how it plays out over time, and who knows. But at any rate, thanks. All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay well.